If I look incredibly cozy right now, it is because I am. Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lindy Jung. I am a science fiction and fantasy author, and I make YouTube channel videos. And I make YouTube videos here about writing, books, and all sorts of other things. You know, whatever I feel like making a video about. Usually writing. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about a slightly controversial topic, and it's all about how self-insert characters are actually really good. So let's go ahead and get started on this slightly spicy topic. Yeah, this is technically, I wrote this script as part of a series, not script, but I wrote this video outline as part of a series that I started way back when about just unpopular writing advice, or just taking some, like, this is bad writing advice and spinning it into something good, but this is actually something I genuinely believe, and as I grow older and more experienced as a writer, I think is actually very true. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Alright, to start off with a little bit of background, what is a self-insert character? In really simple terms, it's basically when an author writes a glorified version of themselves as either the main character or just a major character in their story. Sometimes this is done purely intentionally, like a little bit of an author self-cameo within their work of art. This is really common in comics, I believe. As a concept, self-inserts are pretty much neutral in my opinion. They can go either way, but they have definitely gathered sort of a negative reputation, especially in online writing spaces and reading spaces. And that is for a variety of reasons. I do believe that it is true that blatantly just unfiltered and sort of not self-aware self-insert main characters who can do no wrong, who has everyone falling all over them, etc., etc. Like, that is embarrassing. But it's also something that is sort of just, it comes in hand with being a younger and less experienced writer. Like, God knows I wrote plenty of self-inserts back in the day that were that level of just like awkward. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just sometimes those slip through and they get published, and it is, like, honestly, I would be so embarrassed if any of my self-insert middle school work was read by other people. So I mostly just feel bad for those situations. But I do think this criticism is leveled pretty unjustly in a lot of cases, and especially when it comes to modern female writers, because, you know, Lord forbid that women do anything ever. One of the most egregious examples for me is Stephenie Meyer's Twilight. I mean, that series in general just has a lot that you can criticize about it, from just the shifty depiction of Native American people to the child that gets imprinted on, to just age gap. I don't know. There's tons of critique that you can level at it. It's a very white series. The woman does not seem to fully have it together when it comes to writing people of color, especially. That's the main thing I've noticed, and there's a lot of her Mormonism is showing through. I don't know. But, you know, it's like a camp favorite, and I do love those movies, honestly. But the thing with the main character in Twilight is that she doesn't seem like a self-insert of the main character so much as a self-insert of every teenage girl to ever exist. Personally, I think the clear champion of early 2000s young adult self-insert character, egregious, sort of like wish fulfillment type, was definitely Ready Player One. I'm not here to debate that, I'm just here to talk about self-inserts being kind of good. But this goes to show that a lot of the times a self-insert character gets blasted when it is, 1, a female character written by a woman, 2, tends to be aimed at a younger audience, 3, feels like a form of wish fulfillment for the author, and people will say like pretty weird things if they perceive a character to be a self-insert in some way. The thing with these discussions, however, is that they fail to take into account that a lot of literature has utilized self-inserts beyond like 2009 young adult fiction. It is a hallmark, a staple, dare I say, of a lot of classic literature. It's everywhere. It's been everywhere. And that's because there's a benefit to writing characters that draw from your experiences as an author, especially main characters, especially characters whose point of view you are writing from. That benefit is authenticity, which I have talked about before on this channel. Anyway, yeah, now that we've covered a little bit about what self-insert characters are and what kind of flack they receive, let's talk a little bit more about why they're actually good. I'm just gonna say authenticity again. Authenticity. Relatability, realism, just internality. There's so much more that you can put into a character if you're willing to put yourself into it. Because at the end of the day, the only lived experiences we fully understand are our own. I write characters that take, borrow pieces of the lives of people in my life. That doesn't make any sense, but the people in my life, bits and pieces of them end up in my characters one way or another. But pretty much all of my point of view or main characters are primarily taking from some aspect of myself. This started as a way for me to process things, essentially, to process emotions that I just struggled to put into words, and to process parts of myself I didn't necessarily like. And I also had a phase where I was moving away from writing characters that were like me, not just physically, because I was trying to write characters that weren't small Asian girls for some reason. Actually, most of my characters are tall. That's the wish fulfillment part. I wish I were tall. But anyway, I moved away from that and started to write characters that had basically nothing in common with me, and it was really hard to write them convincingly. I don't think I could do it still. Unless I am drawing from some aspect of myself that I understand, then I just feel like my characters fall very flat. And that isn't to say I've spent any part of my professional writing career. Did I just say professional? I mean, like, my serious writing career. Writing characters that are exact copies of me onto the page or wish fulfillment versions of me. That means that I have been taking small pieces of myself and putting them into basically every character I write to give them something relatable, to give them an edge, to give them some reason that I am writing them. Because... and here's the thing. Here is the kicker. Here is why self-insert characters are good. You are a unique person with a unique set of experiences, a unique personality, and a unique perspective. If you do not put some of that uniqueness, that individuality into your characters could have been written by anyone, and that is not interesting a lot of the time. What you do when you create a character that is to some degree a self-insert is create a character that only you could write to some extent, that only you could write well, convincingly, to any degree of realism. And if your character isn't at least slightly relevant to you, I don't understand why you would be writing their story at all. I talk a lot about how people have to live experiences, like live their life before they go on to write. They have to have something to say, and this ties into that, because if you aren't adding some of your own personal perspective into like the greater canon of literature, whatever that means, like what is pushing you to write this? And this doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you have to write something that will contribute to art, or don't write at all. It's more like, why do you feel compelled to write the story? What are you discovering about yourself? What are you saying about yourself? What are you doing here, essentially? That is not to say that you can't write stories for fun and just for cheap thrills or whatever it is that pushes you to write. Just personally speaking, this is why I write. And this is where I bring in the relatability. I will definitely toot my own horn a little bit and say that a lot of the times one of the things that I hear the most about my characters, especially if they're in a contemporary setting, is that they're believable and they're relatable. I do think relatability in fiction is a little bit overrated when it comes to writing characters, but I do think that you can create this greater sense of resonance and attachment with the readers if you are writing characters that are true to yourself in some way. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because reader expectations will absolutely impact what you put into your characters and how they are perceived as well. One of the things that I have debated putting into my characters is just sort of my own personal feelings about my ethnicity, basically, and my other aspects of my identity that are marginalizations. I don't know how else to put it. But these things are super personal to me, and if I am speaking about my own experiences on those things, then ultimately if that book gets, or story, or whatever, if that piece of writing gets dispensed to a wider audience, I am saying something about that community as a whole, which is tricky. Definitely. It's definitely a part of sharing my work that scares me. But those are the aspects of my writing that I know will have meaning and greater resonance with people who are also in my community, as long as I'm doing it not right, but in a way that is true to myself, because someone out there is going to resonate with that. I know that for a fact. That's why this authenticity matters. That's why you're making someone feel seen, feel heard with this piece of yourself. But honestly, this general topic of discussion is a whole other video that I'm not emotionally or spiritually prepared to make yet, so I'll just sort of move on from that. Just wanted to throw that out there. Next category is things to watch out for when writing self-inserts, because obviously there is sort of a way to do it that is not embarrassing. Of course, you know, you should have your fun and you should do what you want, and if this will help you, if writing a character that's a one-to-one like translation of you onto the page and giving them fun adventures and lots of people to kiss, if that is what will get you writing and will get you excited about your work, you should do that. It's just when I'm thinking about more like publishing minded work, this is kind of what we want to watch out for. So things to watch out for when writing self-inserts, just a general laundry list here. Too much wish fulfillment. So, you know, people don't really call Katniss Everdeen a self-insert because her life is bad. But in general, you don't want to like give your self-insert character or your main character like a conflictless existence. You want them to suffer a little bit. You want them to obtain growth. And I think that's one of the things where we kind of stutter as writers if we're writing characters that are heavily based on ourselves, is you want them to change and grow, because otherwise you kind of come off as a narcissist who thinks that you don't have room for improvement. I think all of my favorite character arcs that I've written have been directly based off of like character arcs that I've undergone. I can't believe that I refer to myself as having character arcs in real life. That's so embarrassing. But you know what I mean, like lessons I have learned, things I've picked up over my 300 years on this earth. And those are tough lessons. I have, like, not egregiously, you know, I've still lived a very relatively peaceful suburban existence, but I've, you know, been through some shit. Everyone has at this point in their life. I like it when my characters who are based off of me or who are based off of some of my struggles also go through some shit, because they learn from it. They have an arc from that. Another thing to watch out is too much like too many specific details. As much as I talk about how I put myself into every character, it's more general things. It's never like I don't want the general public to know my favorite food. I don't know why. I don't want them to know my cat's name. I don't have a cat. Or do I? I don't want them to know my social security number. You don't want to get too deep into the specific details. You're not trying to write an autobiography. Another thing to watch out for is if you personally know, actually I don't know how you would know this if this were the case for you, but think about how introspective you are in terms of your own life. If you are not really the self-reflection type of person, this might not be the move for you. And it's another thing that I encourage newer writers to do, is to pursue that inner growth. Just not only new experiences, but, you know, just talk to people about yourself. Do some meditation, some self-reflection, do some therapy exercises, or go to therapy if you have the means. Figure things out about yourself before you try to write these very like intimate personal details. Or, you know, use writing as your therapy. It's free. You also want to be mindful of writing characters that within their internal monologue are too self-deprecating or too self-aware. Too self-obsessed or self-aggrandizing is like the other, sort of comes hand in hand with this, right? It just feels like a little bit obnoxious, I think. I don't know. There's definitely a way to write characters that have this cheeky internal monologue or are narcissists, but it doesn't feel like it's the author saying it. It feels like the character is that flawed of a person and just hasn't like been clued into it yet. I can't quite articulate it, which is annoying, but it's just, like, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm writing a self-insert. Look at me. Ooh, I'm so edgy. And honestly, that is pretty much it. That's all I have to say about this topic. If you have any thoughts, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I will once again plug my Ko-Fi because your girl is broke. If you have the means, please feel free to drop me a tip because I do this for free. I haven't been able to monetize yet. And then just for fun, I wanted to go over a couple of literary greats from the olden days that have totally written self-inserts and 100% got away with it. Jane Austen with Pride and Prejudice, Charlotte Bronte with Jane Eyre, J.D. Salinger with Catcher in the Rye, Dante's Inferno by Dante Alighieri. He didn't even change the name. Come on. Kurt Vonnegut with Slaughterhouse-Five, Louisa May Alcott with Jo from Little Women. Okay, that is all. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys next time.